Present day. Present time.
Linux is a great operating system. It's really lightweight, it respects your privacy, and it's really secure, and it can run almost on any computer. It can even run even in a laptop, a 2003 laptop. My fiance had a 2003 laptop, and I was able to run Linux right in it like it was nothing. Unlike Windows, it doesn't come loaded with unnecessary apps that you'll never use or even touch. And unlike Windows, it won't cut off your support like Windows 10 and 11 have done in the past. Like, it won't even trick you to upgrade to a different operating system. Like, what can I say? It's nearly perfect. And yes, I'm aware that sometimes they develop viruses for Linux, but it's less likely to happen because if you're developing a virus, you mostly gonna pick the operating system that's the most popular, in this case, Windows. But when it comes to the Linux community, they're really good at seeing vulnerabilities and really patching it up pretty quick. But ask yourself this, if Linux is so great, how come it hasn't taken over the desktop market for operating system? Ask yourself this. Why is our market share so small? Let's dive into some of these reasons, and maybe let's find out what we could do about it or improve in the long run. Before we start, I want to clarify, I'm not here to bash Linux, no pun intended. Like, don't get me wrong, I love Linux. I use Arch, and I've seen it work firsthand, and I know how flexible and reliable Linux could be. And as much as I love Linux, I gotta admit it's not perfect. And I believe understanding its flaws is the first step to help it grow. So the first reason in this article, it says Linux isn't backed by a corporate entity. Unlike Windows, which has Microsoft behind it, or macOS powered by Apple, Linux tends to be more community driven. And while that's one of the great part what makes Linux so great, it also means there's no massive corporation investing in advertising, which could be a little bit problematic, or even pushing it into mainstream awareness, which has its goods and bad. But corporate backing is not everything. Look at Red Hat, for example. After IBM acquired them, they brought in aggressive marketing and support strategies. Essentially, what happened is Red Hat ended up dominating the enterprise market pretty much. So, with the right backing, yeah, I'm pretty sure Linux could be a successor. But at the end of the day, it's not all just marketing. But that also could help a long way because at some point, Red Hat got so big that they actually start selling the operating system in actual stores, and that gained them even more popularity. So I'm not saying marketing doesn't work; it could help to a certain point, but that's not all. That's what I'm trying to say. Okay, for the second reason they give in this article, they say using the terminal is not everyone's cup of tea. Okay, let's be honest, the average user just doesn't even want to think about touching the terminal, but you can't really avoid it forever. Eventually, you'll have to go in there, no matter you like it or not. Sure, there's some distros like Ubuntu and Mint that avoid it as much as possible. Don't really require it, like almost never. But like I said before, for certain tasks, it's unavoidable. For some of us that are already used to it, that's like a second nature to us. But for a beginner, that could be really intimidating. The solution? Yeah, I'm talking about it. It's easier said than done. I'm aware of that, but better tools and better UI, like let's say unifying all like the package managers into one GUI app store, which is for those who don't know, a store that you could download stuff with your eyes looking at it. Like for example, let's take the Microsoft Store. I think that's a pretty good example. And yes, Linux has made a lot of improvement, but if you want to get more users, we need to not only improvise this ISO use, but keep the simplicity. Okay, the third reason that they give is lack of availability of industry standard software. So they have some lists here that's basically like Adobe Premiere, Photoshop, all those type of things. For video editing, I don't think that's much of an issue because there's a lot of content creators like, oh, what was that one content creator called? James Lee animations. Like, I'm going to put a clip here. His video editing is crazy, and he uses DaVinci Resolve, and he only uses Linux. Like, yeah, it is possible, and a lot of creators are starting to wake to the fact that DaVinci Resolve is also it's actually better than Adobe Premiere. Not only is easier, you pay it for once and it's yours for lifetime, which I think that's a way smarter idea in the long run. But when it comes to Photoshop, I literally used to be, when I used to use Photoshop, I used to be way more relaxed making thumbnails. And I had to learn GIMP. And in the beginning, when I started learning GIMP, it was so freaking difficult. I no longer felt like it was relaxing making thumbnails. It actually started to stress me out till I got used to it. But it's not a small learning curve. When it comes to GIMP, there's a big learning curve. And my friend told me they're making a mobile version. I don't know if with an emulator that's probably gonna help a little bit, but I don't think it's a good solution. It's just an idea. And yeah, companies are waking up to the idea that Linux is bigger than people think, and it's starting to become bigger than it was in the past. And there's a lot of content creators, like I said before, like James Lee Animations, that actually has proved this in the past. But I will say we still have a long way. Okay, I'm just gonna call this part fragmentation of distros. As for this, what I could say is Linux's biggest strength sometimes could be its biggest weakness, which could be intimidating for a beginner. Like, if you think like a beginner, you can see how this could be really overwhelming because there's just way too many distros. And for a beginner, support could be such a nightmare because there's only so much amount of distro that actually shows strong support, and I don't think a beginner is familiar with the Arch wiki or goes into Reddit to actually troubleshoot. I know this is an unpopular opinion, but I think if we have a more unified operative system, this could actually take us a long way. Not only it'll make it easier on the beginners, but if let's say a company wants to develop a software, if they see a bunch of freaking different distros and they're like, okay, we gotta develop it for this, for that, they're gonna be like, fuck this, it's not even worth it, you know? Because I feel like their inspiration and motivation is going to be lost. But if we have like one single one, I feel like that will make it easier, and it might like make people more open to developing programs, like actual corporations and companies for Linux, if it's just more unified. It'll just simplify things for both the consumer and the customer. Okay, this one says Linux is behind on gaming scene. Okay, let's just think this gaming is still catching up to make things simpler. Yes, I'm aware there's things like Proton and Wine, and companies like Valve are catching up to this and like really helping the community. But when it comes to outside of Steam, this could be a little bit tricky. And yeah, we know how to use it, but for a beginner, a person who doesn't even know what Wine or Proton is, that could be you could see how that could be problematic and make someone shy away from it. I think if every distro came with this install, and you know how in Windows you double click and install something, well, if that was to come in with the distro and they double click it, it's like it'll be like almost the same process in some ways. I see wine as a temporary solution because we really don't know what's going to happen with the future, whether Valve decides to stop supporting it or something crazy happens. But our goal should be native Linux games, and yeah, developers, that's starting to become a thing more and more, especially from indie people who make indie games. But until our market share is up, I don't think that's gonna be nowhere near. But at the same time, you could argue that wine is making things easy, so developers don't really feel like doing that, and with the new Vulkan and stuff like that. But we'll just have to see. Okay, this basically what it's saying, in other words, in my own words, level exclusive ecosystem. But let's go ahead and read it just so people are not as confused. Level exclusive ecosystem of apps and services. Some might lack that Linux lacks exclusive apps and services and that it holds it back, but I'm going to have to disagree on that one. Locking an ecosystem doesn't really guarantee success. And yes, there's been some success for like Apple. Apple has been one of those that success, but it starts to become annoying when you're locked in certain thing or you have a whole operating system, you got a double boot and you just go to that operating system just to do that one thing. Like I've never done that, but if I had to, trust me, I'll be really freaking annoyed with that. Let's look at company like Nintendo and Sony, how they embrace Steam. For example, let's look at those games they made. Astrobot and what was it, Sonic? Like they embraced the ecosystem and made it available for everyone. Not only they helped themselves to actually sell more. If you saw the Game Awards, they actually made it into a nominee, and Astrobot even won an award. So I see this as other companies when they see this, they're. I think it might motivate them in a way. Okay, let's call this person usability and ease of use. At the end of the day, this is the biggest barrier. Yes, Linux gotten used easier to use over the years. Maybe it's not as easy as Windows and Mac OS for the average user, but we're slowly but surely getting up there. People stick to what they know, and unless Linux offers something good that is impossible to ignore, then it's not gonna make much of a difference. Like we gotta make a ball move. We gotta make something so good it makes you want to slap your mama. That's a meme, by the way. And this is where we have to focus on making Linux beginner friendly. Beginner friendly as much as possible. And spreading the word like the gospel. I don't know, that sounded funnier in my head. I swear Linux users are like the vegans of the operating system community. And until next time, guys, if you like this video, don't forget to give it a like and show support. Or if you dislike it, just tell me in the comments why you didn't like it. We could find some common ground or, you know, have a civilized discussion.